Hi everybody, welcome back to Sunya IAS. We are in our lecture number 3, which is paper 2 section B, and we are discussing ethnobotany. Now this is actually a very interesting lecture and very informative lecture, and every year you will see questions from this. Okay, so here basically we will talk about, let's say there are important herbs, shrubs and trees, the role of the, let's say, tribal groups there, and also how you are extracting, let's say, medicines and all of these let's say things through the traditional knowledge. Okay, so that is one part of it, but other side we'll see there are big pharmaceutical firms which actually exploit this. We will also see, let's say, what is biopiracy, etc., right? So in paper 1B we had seen tribology. Okay, so you should also add this to your knowledge when we discuss ethnobotany. Okay, so I will also be referring to 1B, wherein we have already covered tribology, the works of these important tribes. Okay, secondly, I will also be referring to Convention on Biological Diversity. Okay, for example, in which you talk about Cartagena Protocol, Nagoya talks about Nagoya Protocol, access and benefit sharing. Okay, and I will tell you the important cases in which these access were not shared. Okay, so this also forms a very important base, and you will see this part of question, and again one question on the important medicinal and aromatic plants from this chapter itself, for which I have added a table. You can go through it. Okay, so this is, yes, an interesting topic. We'll see it one by one. So of course, number one is, what is ethnobotany? Okay, so let us define this, and then I'll tell you the important cases that have happened, okay, which actually got a lot of limelight. Okay, so ethnobotany is the study of relationship between the plants and the people. Okay, and specifically how these indigenous cultures use plants for various purposes, including medicine. When I talk about medicine, this is where the pharmaceutical sector comes in. Okay, I also talk about food, and I also talk about the various rituals that keep on going. Okay, so three things: medicine, food and rituals happen here. Okay, so ethnobotany is the role of or the study of relationships between plants, people, and how these indigenous cultures together, let's say, carry out their works. Okay, now in an ideal scenario all these things are fine. Okay, but it does not happen. So what will happen? Let's say the indigenous people and their cultures work, and they, let's say, craft out a medical formula, but then that medical formula can be used by a pharmaceutical group, that can be patented, and those benefits are not shared with them. Okay, so there have been cases, for example, the famous case of turmeric. Okay, so what had happened, that the medicinal and other properties of turmeric had been patented in the West, and then a proper court case had to be fought. The traditional knowledge had to be documented. Okay, so now throughout the lecture you will see a term known as TKDL. By the way, those of you who have prepared for UPSC mains in civil services, at least 2 times a question on traditional knowledge digital library has been asked. The main task of this TKDL is to prevent biopiracy. Okay, so the first case which I'm referring to here is that in the turmeric case, okay, what had happened, the turmeric had been, of course, patented without taking the consent, without sharing the benefits, etc. And then to prevent such things from happening, a lot of changes happened. Okay, particularly by creating a traditional knowledge digital library. Even if you prepare for prelims, maybe you also get to read about it. Especially this is under the Ministry of Ayush. I will also speak about this as well in the second part of this lecture. Okay, so number one, you have to let's say read about this. Here also one thing to know is that this traditional knowledge is not protected by the traditional IPR laws. And when we discuss the challenges, this also is one of the big concerns, that is actually a problem, that because this is not protected, okay, hence there is a provision for misuse. And this whole case opens up 2 different terms which you should definitely be knowing. Okay, one is biopiracy and one is bioprospecting. There are other similar terms, but again that is not too much of for our use. For example, biomining and bioassay, this is where you use microorganisms. In biomining you use them for mining. Okay, when you want to extract some mines, or you can also use to remove metal as a pollutant. So biomining is different. Bioassay is when you want to check the indication level of the level of or the amount of pollution that has happened in an area, that is bioassay. Okay, that is one. So biomining, I think you understand, and bioassay is to check the level of pollution. But here in this class, we are more interested about the first two terms, biopiracy and bioprospecting. Fine. Now see, biopiracy is simply a thing which has to be avoided. It is a negative practice. Fine. Whereas bioprospecting is positive and it is allowed, just for the basic reference, right? Now, what is biopiracy? Indigenous knowledge, okay, is used without authorization, and there is no access or benefit sharing done with the people who generated it in the first place. Okay, so this is what we've discussed here. Let's say, be it the case of turmeric, etc. You use the knowledge from the tribal groups or the indigenous people, but this was not shared with them. The profit or whatever things were not shared. This is biopiracy. But bioprospecting is positive and this is allowed. What is this? In which you are systematically and in an organized manner searching or looking for useful products, okay, from the plants, etc. Okay, from plants, microorganisms, animals. So we are looking for plants, microorganisms, animals, etc. So we are looking for these useful products for commercialization and overall benefits of the society, right? So be it bioprospecting or be it biopiracy, okay? So commercialization, overall benefits, etc. These are shared. So that is one thing that we need to know. Biomining, you already know, okay? So in biomining also, in bioassay also, I think this is fairly certain. Now again, when I talk of biopiracy, you can even think of two other cases, okay? That you get the traditional knowledge legally, even then it can be biopiracy, and even if when you get it illegally, then directly it's a case of biopiracy. So when you get it illegally, which means there is no prior informed consent. Now this term also you will use, prior informed consent, because again when I talk of Convention on Biological Diversity, this is also an important component there. Okay, so if there's an illegal access, so all the things, if you carry out then research, if it is an illegal access, it is biopiracy. Any commercial use, illegal access, biopiracy. Even if you get a patent by whatever means, still a biopiracy. Even if now you have a legal access, but then what if there is no novelty? Already the knowledge was existing and you just modified a very small part of it. So if the patent is lacking novelty, and again if you read about the Indian Patents Act, if you read about the section 3D, etc., okay, compulsorily the licensing, etc. So you know that if there is if the patent does not have any novelty, so again, even if the knowledge is legally or properly accessed, still that is a problem. So that means it is a case of biopiracy, right? And second is, again, if some company already has a patent and then you try to infringe on the patent, again that is a case of biopiracy, right? So there are many cases. It's not just one blanket thing that we are talking of biopiracy. Okay, so you have to be clear about this part first, that yes, biopiracy can happen in multiple ways. Okay, and because I am referring to CBD, let us quickly recall. So of course in 1992 in the Rio Earth Summit, you had three major documents. One was United Nations Framework on Climate Change, one was United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, and of course this one which we are talking about, United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. Okay, now CBD, within CBD you have Cartagena Protocol, you have Nagoya Protocol. Nagoya Protocol talks about access and benefit sharing. Okay, and in that there are three principles. The points which I have written here can be seen in this manner also. Conservation of biological diversity, one. Sustainable use of biological diversity, and again you would notice that in paper 1B and paper 2B all these points can again be written. And third is what is very important from ethnobotany perspective, that fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from utilization of biological diversity. Okay, fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from the utilization of biological diversity. So first of all, we need to understand that this is the main part that we are targeting and this is the main part we are focusing on. Okay, this is related to biopiracy. Okay, now two cases I will give you. So one is this case of Costa Rica. Okay, In this, what had happened, and again, please notice the term is bioprospecting. This is actually a positive exercise in which, let's say, you have a company that is going to aid the local people. So in Costa Rica, what had happened, for example, there was a pharmaceutical company, Merck. Okay, so Merck had provided funding or money for the conservation projects. Okay, to get access to the biodiversity samples. Okay, so here both, let's say, the people and also the company, they were benefited. It was a transparent, it was a proper agreement. They had provided money, and based on that money, they were able to research on a potential drug. Now I will also tell you a lot of drugs and a lot of use cases of ethnobotany. Okay, in Indian context also, and some global examples I'll also give you, so that you are able to see that there are a lot of use cases of ethnobotany. Okay, so let's say you're talking of Costa Rica's, let's say, drug development. In India, again, one of the most famous cases of Ayurveda can be neem, Azadi Rakta indica. Now this can be used in many antiseptic as well as, because it has both antiseptic and anti-inflammatory properties. Neem. Okay, so this can be one example which you can use again and again. Second example, now this example I want you to use. Okay, this is a very let's say celebrated example here. Okay, so Jeevani has been developed by the Kani tribes. Kani tribes are from the southern part of Western Ghats. Okay, you might have also read about Kani tribes in your prelims also. So first is Jeevani. Now this Jeevani is made from, so you also have this particular species, right? Trichopus zalinicus species is there, okay, which is also known as Arogibcha. Okay, so this is actually done, and of course this was developed by the scientists at Jawaharlal Nehru Botanical Garden and Research Institute. You don't have to remember the name of the institute. All you need to know is that yes, Kani tribes had developed this Arogibcha, which is known as Jeevani, and this also can be used because here let's say the different scientists and the people, indigenous people, they are coming, they're collaborating, and they are developing things which can be overall used for the benefit. Okay, one more thing you can write down: the nodal agency for ethnobotany and other things, because I'm talking of botanical garden, etc. So it is, the nodal agency is the Botanical Survey of India. Okay, that is the nodal agency for ethnobotany related works. Okay, so that is also one thing that you need to know. Okay, so I think you are very much familiar now with what is biopiracy and what is bioprospecting. Okay, now with this, a question should arise in your mind that why traditional knowledge should be documented. Okay, of course the main reason is to prevent biopiracy, because there are a lot of important use cases of the things which we have. Okay, so here we will go through some of the important, let's say, examples. There are a lot of examples which are there. So number one, we'll see why traditional knowledge must be documented. Okay, and second, we will see the role of ethnobotany in Indian medicine system. Okay, so here also I have a lot of examples for you in almost all the points. So 8 points here, and again almost 10 points we will see in why the traditional knowledge must be documented. Even if I do not tell you why should it be documented, of course we can think that this will promote the well-being of the tribal groups, more income for them, okay, prevent biopiracy, sustainable biodiversity conservation. So yes, it will be points like this only. But here what we will also see examples from India and also different parts of the world. Okay, so number one, if you are documenting any of the traditional knowledge, it will help in preservation of cultural heritage. Okay, so the cultural heritage will definitely be preserved. So for example, you have the Maori people from New Zealand. Okay, so they have a lot of oral traditions, etc. So when you are documenting a thing, that helps. If you want to give the example, you can just directly use the example of Kani tribes. Okay, and again I'll give you example of many Indian tribes also. Okay, so we can talk about those, and one is Kani. There is also a Kani Karan tribe. We also have a lot of primitive tribal groups which can also have a very rich history, right? So number one is preservation of cultural heritage. Second, conservation of biodiversity. This goes without saying. Okay, so when you are actually documenting these things, then you will be better promoting conservation efforts. You will get to know the resources better. Okay, so again, many indigenous tribes in Amazon, in Western Ghats, in parts of Africa, okay, they have very much detailed knowledge about the forest, or let's say rainforest ecosystem. So if we are able to document that, nothing like it. Scientific validation is also provided. Now again, a good example, turmeric. We were talking about turmeric here also, okay, the case of turmeric, right? So here also, turmeric again has a lot of medicinal properties. If you document it, it becomes easier, okay? So for example, the use of turmeric in Ayurveda for its anti-inflammatory properties has been validated and expanded by modern research. And this is also where you have, first of all, traditional medicine, and you have scientific medicine. And many times what happens, the people who are following the traditional medicine, be it Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, Roga, Sigpa, etc., so they sometimes are not having too much of confidence in it, which is why if you document it, if you carry out trials proper from a scientific and a modern research basis, it also adds to, number one, let's say more people get exposed to it, they're more confident to use it. Okay. Economic benefits goes without saying. Let's say Kani tribe shared the knowledge of energy boosting properties of this Arogyapacha. Okay. And this actually led to development of this Jeevani drug. Okay. And there was a benefit sharing agreement. So the Kani tribe also got in a lot of, let's say, revenue because of that, right? Because see, this example has been very much documented. This was published many times in The Hindu and many newspapers. So this is one, at least one example I want you to definitely take away from this class. Okay. Protection against biopiracy, by now everybody would know, yes, this will have to be there. Okay. So for example, you have India's traditional knowledge digital library just to document this traditional knowledge, number one. And second, this will prevent biopiracy and unauthorized patenting. Okay, so now see, if there are different, let's say, if a patent has to be granted, there will be some patent examiners. The patent examiners usually go through databases to filter out information and to check for duplicates, right? So if they are able to find out that yes, there is already a duplicate, or there is already an entry on turmeric, or let's say any other, let's say tulsi, hing, so on and so forth, so they would not award a patent to some other company. But for that to happen, this has to exist. That is why India is now focusing a lot on this traditional knowledge digital library. Fine. Then enhancing global knowledge. Okay. Now here also, by the way, this did not just happen for medicine. Again, many let's say cases of Indian meditation, yoga, that was also patented in many of the, let's say, West, let's say, centers. And again, India had to fight cases, had to document a lot of things, right? So that is one case. Other than that, if you have some important, let's say, water harvesting techniques, for example, let's say you have johads in Rajasthan. Okay. So this also helps in proper water conservation. In, for example, in Bihar, you have these ahar pines. Okay. So this also is a good example of traditional water harvesting. Fine. Education, yes, you get to know more about tribes. So one is that the tribal knowledge or the indigenous people knowledge is also integrated and gets known with the mainstream. Okay. And in fact, with education, I will add one more point. This helps in integrated tribal development. Because I told you, see, tribology, tribal development, all these things will go hand in hand, and the more you connect, the better points you can generate. Okay. Here, of course, there is a case of African schools, but also we can think of India, portions of, let's say, Northeast, we can think portions of West, North, South, different parts of India where you have different tribes. So you get to know about cultural heritage, traditional wisdom. Okay. Then I think one is resilience to change. Okay. So here, for example, if you talk about Arctic, so there are a lot of communities there which have shown that they have very good knowledge about extreme weather conditions, be it ice, be it animal migration patterns, etc. So my main point here is resilience to change. Think about climate change. I've already said that in your forestry, always add climate change as one separate point. Okay. So this resilience to change, this can happen. Then when we talk of sustainable development, okay. So again, you have, let's say, the Ifugao people from the Philippines. So you have these rice terraces again in India. When you think of the different, let's say, saffron cultivation, or let's say the below rice cultivation, or the portions of Kutanaid, okay, or the portions of Odisha. So there are a lot of sustainable techniques as well. So again, you can link this with sustainable development goals. So sustainable agriculture practices will help you in promote biodiversity, promote or prevent erosion. Okay. Respect and recognition also. So again, when you, let's say, document all of this thing, okay. So again, you are able to, for example, in this case, when I'm saying, so there is a Hoodia plant, and through this an appetite suppressant drug was actually created. Okay. So again, when you actually document something, so you also respect and you recognize the contribution of that particular community. Okay, that is one. One more point which I've not written here, but I think is very relevant to this discussion and also to traditional medicine, is the case of COVID-19. COVID-19 actually gave a lot of boost. In fact, in this, let's say, ethnobotany, when you read your syllabus, you also have a let's say, heading of traditional Indian medicine, and they've mentioned Ayurveda, etc. This actually got a lot of boost during the time of COVID-19, okay, because back then the allopathic or the traditional or the basic medicine which were there, they were not giving that much result. And again, as immunity boosters, a lot of these things, a lot of indigenous knowledge was also used. So we can also use that as an example, okay. That is why also the more you document it, there is a better recognition, more reliance, and more use by the people who are living. All right. So traditional knowledge must be documented, of course. That is what you can understand here. All right. Then ethnobotany and Indian medicine system. Okay. Now this is also a very complementary thing which we read about. Here I'm going to focus more on how can these, let's say, how can ethnobotany help in Indian medicine system. Now, a lot of the points which I've already discussed will of course be similar. Okay. Because see, I give you example of COVID-19, again climate change. So when I'm talking of the resilience of medicine systems, of course, we are going to talk about these points also. Okay. And here also, while I've not written the examples, but keep in mind, example of turmeric, keep in mind this Aryog Pacha, okay, or India's TKDL. So this also should be known to you here as well. Okay. So now one by one, we'll go through this as well. So we're talking of ethnobotany and its role in Indian medicine system. Fine. So number one, ethnobotany is very much rooted in the indigenous forestry practices. Okay. So be it Ayurveda or Siddha, etc. So this Indian medicine system is totally integrated here. Okay. And you would see, let's say, many plant extracts like Raufolia serpentina. In fact, I'll tell you this Raufolia serpentina. Just give me a second. I have, yes. Raufolia serpentina is Sarpagandha. It is used to treat hypertension, anxiety, insomnia. Okay. So when you have Raufolia serpentina, it is used by the Jaunsari tribe in Uttarakhand. Again, add this point to your notes in tribology. I gave you a lot of tribes. Again, there add Kakani tribes. So you use 1B and 2B parallelly. Okay. So yes, this is used for epilepsy treatment. And again, this is, let's say, derived from the tribal wisdom. Okay. So that is one thing that one needs to be, let's say, sure about. Okay. So Indigenous Forestry Foundation, okay, can be thought about in this case. Then you have the complementarity, okay, between medicine and agroforestry. Okay. So you have the knowledge which is similar to, so this, see, the knowledge of agroforestry, okay, be it yoga, naturopathy, okay, all of this therapeutic practices also derives important components from ethnobotany. Okay. So here in medicine and the agroforestry part gets combined. Okay. So that becomes complementary. One, nutrient cycling for nutritional balance. Okay. So here also ethnobotany, because it gives you dietary insights. Okay. So what are the essential nutrients? And the moment I say essential nutrients, you may think of amla. Amla actually helps a lot in vitamin C. Okay. And again, the deficiency of vitamin C can lead to scurvy. But in this case, when you are aware about ethnobotany, so a lot of, let's say, dietary insights can be given, and you can add this point to SDG 2, hunger, because hunger is not just food security, hunger is also nutritional security. This is where again this nutrient cycling can come in. Okay, then again regeneration for revival. Okay, so here also the regeneration and rejuvenation of Indian medicinal system can happen. Okay, which can become a, now this point is very important, because with this point also write down in your notes the context of COVID-19. In fact, COVID-19, and if you would have seen the so many different ailments we used to drink, okay, different colored, let's say, extracts, etc. The main reason was that we wanted a safe alternative to the modern allopathic treatments, and also think of the people who are not able to afford the expensive allopathic medicines. That is why a lot of people switch to homeopathic or Ayurvedic. One, there is, let's say, there is no side effect. Okay, so a lot of these things can be integrated in this. Okay, now this can also help you in treatments against, let's say, diabetes, cancer, hypertension. So there are a lot of use cases here as well. Again, if you go through the Ministry of Ayush, perhaps if you have read about, let's say, there is a BGR 34, okay, which basically is related to diabetes, and many people, especially, of course, there are different cases of diabetes. There is type 1 and type 2. In many cases in type 2, etc., it is useful. Okay, it helps down in regulating the sugar levels, etc. Right? Conservation through documentation, this you also know. Okay, that one thing is, or let's say one of the challenges is that one is not able to conserve them properly. Okay, so here also let's say you have to think about it in this manner. I think one example I've not written here, I'll just I think I should write it down above. Okay, you can write about, because I'll talk this about when I talk to you about this table, Arjuna. Okay, so here also one example, because I've written diabetes, cancer, hypertension, you can also write down the Arjuna tree. Okay, so Arjuna tree is actually, or let's say the extract of it is cardioprotective, which means it is useful for the heart. Again, this can be linked to the Indian medicine system. Fine. Then again, this also is important. It helps to preserve the biodiversity, because ethnobotany talks about the importance of preserving the diverse plant species. Okay, so again, within this embedded is the idea to have a proper ecological balance. Okay, and last is sustainable harvesting here. Okay, so yes, you have to think about sustainable management again here, ethnobotany, because you have to talk about how the plant species, the tribals, have to live in harmony. So that requires sustainable harvesting, so that these medicinal plants can be used properly, but not, they should not be overexploited. Okay, so these are some of, let's say, the portions that you should be aware about. Okay, other than that, there are many other examples. For example, when I tell you this table, okay, here you have many examples, and in fact this is not exhaustive, you can add even more. Let's say many of you would also know about Tulsi. Okay, Tulsi also has a lot of important medicinal properties. Then when you think of the case of Northeast, let's say when I'm talking of the sacred groves of Meghalaya, etc. So there also a lot of these trees, etc. are being worshipped, and not just worshipped, they also have a lot of medicinal benefits. Again, think of mangroves, a lot of mangroves also can have medicinal benefits. Okay, so that is one thing that you need to know here. This was the part I was telling. This is a fairly new news. Okay, 17 August 2022. And here what has happened, Cabinet has approved the access of this traditional knowledge digital library database to users beside the patent office. Okay, so here also let's say one thing that we need to know. Okay, that number one, I told you that if there is a patent examiner, earlier only they used to have the access, but now it is also available to user. So that means the education part of it, the knowledge part of it, the whole component has been elevated or increased. Okay, so that also is a very important component, right? So here also this intends to act as a bridge. Okay, so in the sense, whatever information is available, okay, so all of that, if that is properly given to patent examiners, so the false or misleading patents can be avoided. That is the whole idea behind this TKDL. And again, this was established in the year 2001, okay, by the CSIR, and now which has the department which now has become a separate ministry, Ministry of Ayush. Okay, I'm also saying you can also get a question on TDKL also, TKDL also, right? So be prepared for it. Second, it is digitized in 5 international languages, which includes English, German, French, Japanese, and Spanish. This is one thing. And again, you know that this is available across many areas. Second, it is related to Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, Soa, Rigpa, and Yoga. Add this point also because in the last part of this lecture, I will also discuss about these traditional systems of medicine. Okay, and there also a current affairs has happened because in Gujarat, a global center for traditional medicine is going to be set up. Okay, this is going to be a first of the let's say one of the first center in the world in Gujarat. So again, link this knowledge to this ideally should be TKDL. Pardon me for this. Okay. So make sure you understand this part, that this is again a part of current affairs that you should be knowing about. All right. Now I will talk to you about medicinal and aromatic plants. Okay. Now here, of course, see, I've added a list. Why? Because if you see the paper of 2021, they had directly asked you the name of 10, let's say, medicinal plants. And they did mention 10. Okay. So what I will say, you make a list out of it. And what I've done, I have separated, let's say, the plants, and I've also separated the trees. Okay. So there are 2 separate lists here, because if you are, let's say, using a lot of products, okay, some of them you already know, so they are easy to remember, but for some of them you have to put some effort in. Okay, I will also give you examples. For example, and I think I can also add a few things here as well. I will start from, let's say, Brahmi. Okay, Brahmi, if you are aware, is used, let's say, if somebody wants to enhance their memory, etc. If you have heard about a lot of, let's say, memory based syrups, etc., in that Brahmi and Bringraj, okay, that also is used. Bringraj is, by the way, also used for hair growth. Okay, Punarnava is there. Now Punarnava is anti-inflammatory in a lot of medicinal let's say compounds. Punarnava is also present. So is the Shatwari, okay, or Kalmeg. And by the way, there is a Chitrak, Kharitki, Avle. So there are many of these components which are there. If you are aware, it's good, but still, if you make a list out of it, this slide and this slide, and you repeat it, let's say, once, twice, thrice, you will become very familiar with all these terms. Okay, because questions have already been asked, so it is always better that we know them. So first we will see this. In fact, I already told you, Sarpgandha, Rovifolia serpentina, used by Jaunsari tribes of Uttarakhand. Okay, so this treats hypertension, insomnia, anxiety. Now, in case you are not able to remember all of the, let's say, properties, mostly you will see they are anti-inflammatory. Okay, so you can be very smart in how you want to remember the uses. By the way, in the question of 2021, they had also asked you the functions and uses apart from the scientific name. So yes, you have to know the common name and the scientific name. Yes, I know this involves a bit of cramming, but then in paper 2B, there will be some cramming. Again, when I discuss with you forest utilization, there is also some cramming of the different uses and their names, etc. But this is a one-time effort, and there's a direct benefit which you get. Okay, start with 5 names, and then you can just increase it as we move along. Okay, so Sarpgandha, Brahmi, aloe vera, many of you would be knowing. Okay, Chitrak, Vasaka, Kalmek, Shatavari, Bringraj, and Punarnava. Okay, other than that, I think Ashwagandha is also one thing many of you would be knowing. Okay, you can also add Ashwagandha to your list. Okay, and the scientific name for Ashwagandha is Withania somnifera. Okay, Withania somnifera. Even if you see Himalaya, which is a big manufacturer of all these, let's say, cases, even if you see the behind here, so if one is this Ashwagandha, there is also Ginkgo biloba, which also, let's say, improves the cognitive function here. Okay, so if you are aware about these parts, this will not be that difficult for you. Okay, so I'm not going to read out all the names here. You can just, let's say, go through this. You can either take a screenshot or you can download this handout. This will be, let's say, this is actually very much important, and same is the case here. These are all the important trees. I gave you the example of Neem and Arjuna already. Apart from that, you have Ashok, Gugul, Bale, Sal, Sandalwood, Indian Kino, Bilva, and Jamun. Now here Jamun, while it is very last, but don't think it is not important. It is actually very important. Syzygium cumini. By the way, Jamun is extremely important for the people who have diabetes. Okay, in fact, when you write about, I think I told you about this BGR, diabetes, you can here give the example of Jamun also. Okay, So jamun actually is very much important, right? And in fact, it is also said that a lot of people here, people living in the metro cities, they want to have blueberry, strawberry, etc. But they don't actually go in for our own Indian, let's say, the varieties. This is because this is tuned to our own weather conditions. So it is better if we consume jamun. Okay, this is good for diabetes, good for digestive health, and this is anti-inflammatory. So at least this is famous. Then Indian quinoa, this is also famous. Pterocarpus marsupium, this is also diabetes management. Okay, anti-inflammatory. Sandalwood, Santanal album, so skin health, anti-inflammatory. Okay, so this is also something which is important. Sal is Shoria robusta. We've seen sal so many times, right? Anti-inflammatory, skin disorders, yes. Gugul is if you have, let's say, had any, let's say, religious or a function. So a lot of let's say, it is just like your incense sticks, but yes, of course, this is more concentrated in nature. So this is also, let's say, Commiphora vegetae. This can also be taken up, so helps in arthritis, anti-inflammatory, and it has also other purposes. Okay, Ashoka helps in, let's say, uterine health, menstrual relief. This I told you, Arjuna is cardioprotective, so it actually helps the heart. Okay, strengthen the heart's muscles. That is why Arjuna or Terminalia Arjuna is important. And neem is Azadi Rakta Indica. We've seen neem in many use cases. Antiseptic, anti-inflammatory, and treats skin disorders. You have seen many face wash, etc. branding themselves having neem. Okay, so these are some, let's say, very important examples which you can think about in this case. Okay, so these common names I want you to at least remember. Start with 5. I think in trees at least you would be having a slight more advantage, because neem, Arjuna, Ashoka, or let's say sandalwood, and let's say jamun. These 5 we have discussed, including sal. 6. Then 3 or 4 you have to just remember extra. If you go with 10, you will feel very confident both here and also here. Now here also there are few things which I have not added. For example, I think tulsi is not added here. Other than that, I think turmeric is also not added, but I think turmeric I gave you example before. Then the case of Aryog, this Aryogchpa, which was Aryogpacha, used by Kani tribes. So again, when you compile your list, okay, so whatever examples I have, let's say, used here, because if I could have added, the slide would have not been visible. Okay, so there are also constraints of space and time. Okay, so you can also add all these points here. And again, let's say you, because of, let's say, in your area, or in, let's say, in your, let's say, surroundings, you are aware of other herbs or plants, or let's say trees, add it to your notes, because ultimately it is what you remember in the exam that is going to matter. And try to use as many. Again, I think I'm remembering amla also. I told you, use amla in your answers. Okay, use ashwagandha, Withanias this somnifera. So again, apart from this also there are many. Okay, so you use them as much as possible in your answers. This is how you are going to differentiate. Okay, so turmeric, ashwagandha, Kani tribes, okay, all these things I want you to write down. Now again, in your syllabus, they have written the name, scientific name, habitat, distribution, and botanical features of all this. Fine. So far, they've asked you simple questions based on the name and the uses. Okay, but still, if they even go one step ahead, okay. So for these 10, let's say, trees, I've also given you the habitat, distribution, and the botanical features. Here also, all you need to do for these 10, take one piece of map. Okay, in this map, try to map all these regions, and then you'll have a fair idea. You don't have to exactly cram it. Okay, so don't worry here. Habitat and the distribution are, let's say, just see the overall geographical area, and botanical features in most of them are, let's say, not, let's say, very different. Okay, so it will not be very difficult for you to remember, because some of the trees you would have seen, neem you would have seen, Arjun perhaps you would have seen, Ashok tree is very much seen in the urban or some areas. Okay, but the ones which, let's say, you have not read about at all, for them you can just highlight, okay, this is the botanical feature of this part. Okay, so let's say you have neem, Azadi Rakta indica, found in tropical and semi-tropical regions. Okay, native to the subcontinent, and also found in parts of Africa and Southeast Asia. Other than that, yes, botanical feature is that, of course, this is this tree, it has serrated leaves and this fragrant flowers, etc. Right? So same is the case with turmeric. Now here again, I would just be then reading out, because already the content is there. Okay, so I'll just quickly go through this. What you should do, remember the name, scientific name, go through the habitat, make a piece of map for your own understanding. Okay, so again, let's say if it is oblong leaves, okay. Now this is important, yellow orange rhizomes, okay. If you've seen turmeric, okay, and before grinding part of it, so yes, you can associate with this. Tulsi is a aromatic herb, okay, green or purple leaves here, right? It can have some spikes. Arjuna, let's say, is a large evergreen tree with buttressed trunk, okay. Same is the case of, let's say, Ashoka, okay. Where is it going to be found? In many cases, it will be Indian subcontinent. You can just write that, but just see the way in which I have presented the content, because this is the exact way this is mentioned in your syllabus, okay. So that is why I have used this exact part, okay. So let's say Google is found in arid regions, okay. North Africa too, it's found in a big area, okay. So it has this papery bark and very small pink flowers. Bale is also there. You have sal, shore robusta, we've seen this many times, okay. And yellowish brown flowers, etc., because sal is also famous for its flowers. You have sandalwood, okay. Let's say it gives a purple black fruit, etc. It's a this particular tree here, sandalwood here, okay. Okay, fine. So this is how you can go through this list here once, fine. Now again, I've also added few of the previous year questions. By the way, the things which I've already told previously has also been asked as a previous year question. Now this, the ethnobotany knowledge helps in identifying viable medicinal plants for the pharmaceutical industry. Again, see, helps to identify viable medicinal plants for the pharmaceutical industry, right? Again, all you need to know, all the points here, exactly all these 8 points can be used. And how can you differentiate your answer? The more examples you give. Because, and again, see, if you remember this, and also if you remember this, the treatment, because so many properties we have discussed, cardioprotective, skin disorders, digestive health, wound healing, so on and so forth, right? So you will easily now be able to answer such questions. But again, you know, you should define, first of all, ethnobotany, and then give how does it become viable medicinal plants. Okay, so we have discussed the case of, let's say, Tulsi, the case of Jaunsari tribes, the case of Kani tribes. These will be all these will be separate points. Ashwagandha, okay, Arjuna tree, Neem. You can even give more than 8 examples if time permits, okay. Again, in these questions, I want the students of my class to get the maximum marks, okay, right? And again, there is one more, let's say, component which is again mentioned at the last, okay. And after that, I'll just give you a small dictation also, okay. So here, okay, I think there are few things which you can also, let's say, write down. In this part, it also helps to identify pharmaceutical. Here, 1 or 2 things I want you to write down also. 1 second. Okay, this will also get repeated, fine. So you can also write down traditional origin of some of the current pharmaceuticals, okay. Traditional origin of some of the pharmaceuticals. Okay, I think I've explained this here also. Okay, fine. So first we'll do this, and then there is a small dictation which I want to give you. Okay. So here is again a heading from your syllabus: factors affecting the action and the toxicity of drug plants and their chemical constituents. Now here I've added a lot of points. Most of them you will easily understand, and every point has an example. Fine. So number 1, see, they're asking you what are the factors which affect the action and the toxicity. Now just think, if you're popping in a dolo, the doctor tells you how many dolo or whatever medicine you take, whether you have to take 3 times a day, 2 times a day, 1 times a day. So the action and the toxicity, etc., has to be told to you. So dosage is very important, number 1. Okay, so number 1 is the dosage. Okay, so the therapeutic effect or the kind of effect this is going to happen, again, for a small child the dosage is different, for an adult the dosage is different, right? So number 1, dosage, the therapeutic effect or the toxicity of this drug or a plant extract is determined by the dosage. Number 1. Example can be aspirin, okay, which is, let's say, now this is the examples here are the most important. Aspirin derived from a willow bark, okay, can be used as an analgesic, that is what, a pain relief, as a tranquilizer, okay. However, if you take too much of it, in fact, you would also know in many movies, let's say if there's a sleeping pill or there's a different kind of pill, if you overdose it, you will have secondary repercussions. So this can lead to stomach bleeding. So both cases helps you but also harms you, depends on the dosage. One. Second, what is the part of the plant which is used? Okay, so different part will have different concentrations of active compounds. This is also very important. Now, if I'm talking of the seeds of the opium poppy, this contains alkaloids like morphine. Now, this is very common example. Alkaloids, okay? In fact, when you let's say drink the green tea, or naturally let's say nicotine, or let's say caffeine, etc. Again, they have alkaloids, small. But this is different. This is from opium poppy. You have morphine, okay? So the seed of the opium will have this, whereas other parts will have something else. So again, the action and toxicity will also depend on which part of the plant you are using. Okay. Then what is the harvesting time? Okay. So here also, let's say the potency of the essential oils. You might have heard of lavender flowers, lavender oils also. Okay. So when the potency of that is the highest when it is harvested at the beginning of blooming. If you harvest it later, and if again there's a considerable time delay, then the potency will reduce. Okay. After that, you have preparation and processing also. So this can also affect the potency here. Okay. So let's say when I'm talking of green tea, black tea, etc. So let's say there is this Camellia sinensis. From one you get black tea also, from one you have green tea, depends on the process preparation, and both give you different antioxidants. Okay. So this also is a, let's say, case to understand. Then you have genetic variability. Okay. So here also, let's say if I'm talking of varieties of apples, okay, you can have, let's say, Granny Smith, Red Delicious. Again, think of India, in Shimla, in let's say parts of Kashmir, in other parts of different apples also. Okay. So they have different phytonutrients. Okay. So genetic variability, again depending on the region, will also impact the drug plants and their chemical constituents. Now, environmental factors very much, let's say soil, pH, soil quality, climate, this will also impact the composition. Okay. Here also, if you think of wine, grapes, and again if you think of France, or let's say the vineyards in, let's say, the parts of India. Okay. So there will also be different because of different environmental conditions. Okay. Now here also, if you have other drug which you're combining with a plant-based drug, the both combination of these drugs will also alter the action and the toxicity. Okay. So here also, let's say if you have the grapefruit juice, okay, which can have greater concentrations when you have, let's say, added more medications. Again, when you think of, let's say, sometimes doctor gives you so many different, let's say, medicines. So overall impact or the toxicity will be far greater sometimes, which is why when you have more, let's say, prescriptions, sometimes that also cause a secondary reaction in the body. Okay. So that can also be thought about. Then there can also be individual variability. Not every person will respond in the same manner. Some people can have harsh reactions. Some people have general allergy. Okay. So genetics, age, this will also have, let's say, important say here. Then you also can think about adulteration. Okay. Now here, let's say you have commercial ginseng. Okay. Ginseng is what is used in, let's say, Revital. You might have seen ads also. They also use sometimes ginkgo biloba as well. But generally ginseng is what is there. Okay. So here also, if they are adulterated, and why do you want to adulterate it? Again, one reason can be to reduce the cost of it, because if you're sourcing everything naturally, this also can lead to a lot of problems. Okay. In fact, this also happens a lot with ashwagandha as well. Ashwagandha has become very famous for both bodybuilding, etc. So in many cases, a lot of contamination is also happening because the big companies will also claim that we are getting the most, let's say, raw or the most natural part, and they can charge a premium. But what if they are actually mixing it with a synthetic variety? It's very difficult to tell. That also will change the kind of results which you already get. Okay. Stability and storage, again, this will always be a common problem. Again, this is a problem more acute for the developing countries, because again, cold storage is not that great. Traditional knowledge is not that well documented. Even if it is documented, you don't have the infrastructure, right? So that is also a problem. And again, these points I'll also then tell you when I'm telling you the challenges also, which will be the last part here. Okay. So yes, potency, safety, plant derived will degrade over time. Yes. The medicines will also have an expiry date, right? So be it your essential oils, eucalyptus oil, they will oxidize and they will lose the therapeutic value. So if you don't have adequate infrastructure, you will lose out a lot. Okay, so again, that is one thing that needs to be aware about. Okay, one needs to be aware about, right? So that is one. Fine. So yes, these are the, let's say, important components which one needs to know here. Okay, so that is one part. All right. Now we move to again one more question which has already been asked. Define ethnobotany. Write in detail about the role of ethnobotany in modern medicine. Again, the same exact question has been asked multiple times, and approaches in the drug industry. And in fact, you now even know in more detail, because this topic, factors affecting action, because this is one topic which is often ignored, which you don't often see in many, let's say, use cases. Okay. So this also is a very important part that you have to be aware about, right? So again, this is, I think, one question which you can definitely answer. Okay. Now, one more thing before I think I end the lecture is to write about the challenges of ethnobotany. Okay. So the last heading here will be the challenges associated with ethnobotany. Okay. And here you can think about a lot of challenges. Number one, of course, is the lack of documentation of traditional knowledge. While it is happening, but still more of this needs to be done. One. Okay, then again you can think of lack of infrastructure. Infrastructure of what? Let's say if you want to store these formulations, so the cold storage is not appropriate. Again, a lot of, let's say, proper storage houses, etc., they are not properly made out. This also is a problem. Infrastructure can be both, let's say, physical as well as social. Then awareness and education is missing. Okay. And with that, you can also link, there are also some cases wherein biopiracy happens, but let's say the people are not aware about their rights. So that is also a problem in some cases. Okay. Then it actually requires, now if you see, this actually requires a interdisciplinary approach. For example, we are discussing this in forestry. You also know agroforestry is also embedded here. Pharmaceuticals is embedded here. Patents, the knowledge of patents, laws, that is also embedded here. Governance is also embedded here. So a lot of disciplines, in fact, tribes, tribology, all these things are embedded here in one single subject. So even this becomes very important. Okay. So you can also write that down. Then the issues related to overutilization, overexploitation. Okay. So while we want sustainable development, but does that really happen? Okay. So again, that is a problem here. Unsustainable, let's say, development, overexploitation, overuse, misuse, all these points can be written here. Okay. So that is one. Then you can also reformulate the point. You should definitely write this point again, biopiracy. You can also mention, while you should do equitable sharing of benefits, what actually happens? Unequitable sharing of benefits. Unequitable sharing of benefits does happen, right? This also becomes a challenge overall. Fine. So that is one. Okay, so we have to think about, let's say, the policy support has to be there. In many cases, the policy support or the infrastructure in that sense is missing. So while we are expanding the ambit of traditional knowledge to digital libraries, but overall policy should be there, which should integrate biotech, which should integrate science and tech, tribal knowledge, okay, and the whole ecosystem around it. Okay. So this also should be there, right? So if these challenges are overcome, if the government, let's say Ministry of Ayush or let's say TKDL is able to expand and they are able to educate the people, it is becoming more, because all these points, if you reverse or flip them, that is how you get your answer here as well. Okay. And don't forget to link this to the global, let's say, system of medicine, traditional medicine, which is now going to be my last topic. Okay. The traditional system of medicine. Okay. What is it? Okay. Unani, Ayurveda, naturopathy, homeopathy, yoga, siddha. And why are we doing this separately also? Because I told you the current affairs aspect is that there is in Gujarat, the global, let's say, traditional medicine system has been developed in Gujarat. Okay. So when now you write about it, do write about this. So we'll see this, and we'll also see the need to invest, or let's say the role of this traditional medicine systems. Okay. So of course, one is the definition. So according to World Health Organization, Again, a very good point to introduce always has to be, let's say, use some authoritative body. Again, let's say when you talk of agroforestry, I started that with FAO's definition, Food and Agriculture Organization. In forestry, many times you can quote FAO because FAO takes a very important role in forest conservation as well. Okay, so traditional medicine system is the total sum of knowledge, skills, and practices, indigenous and of different cultures which have come in to maintain health, prevent, diagnose, and treat physical and mental illness. Okay, so that is one. It encompasses the ancient practices, and here again this is let's say a normal definition. I don't want to dwell too much on this. Okay, this can have acupuncture, Ayurvedic medicines, herbal mixtures, etc. Okay, as well as some elements of the modern as well. So this is what you will have in traditional medicine. Okay, so in India, of course, you know, we have Ayurveda, Yoga, Siddha, etc. Okay, Siddha is being done, let's say, in Tamil Nadu, in parts of Kerala. Sova Rigpa, if you see the portions of Leh Ladakh, because this has an element of Tibetan Buddhist, let's say, element here. Okay, so Sikkim, Arunachal, Darjeeling, Lahul Spiti will be practicing the Sova Rigpa medicine. Okay, so when you write that, I want you to write down about all these 5 in the introduction. Preferably, if you can draw a simple diagram like this and give a basic definition. Okay, and then we will talk about, let's say, the need to know about the traditional medicine in India. So number one is that the traditional medicine workers, they are largely unrecognized. So this also is a challenge that needs to be overcome. Why? Fine. So they are number one, unrecognized. Okay. So there is a lack of accredited courses. So number one, what you should do, because you should number one, recognize them, and there should be some accredited courses for them as well. So that is also very much important. Okay. Second, again, please know that the role of this traditional medicine systems, these plant sources, etc., is very much. Around 40% of modern pharmaceuticals, be it aspirin from the willow bark, or let's say cancer treatments, let's say from the rosy periwinkle, all these are deriving or originating from the natural sources. So be it naturopathy or all these traditional medicines have to be protected, have to be conserved. Again, link this with why should traditional knowledge be documented, which I covered in the first part of my lecture. Okay, then think about the modern research techniques. Okay, so here also, let's say, WHO talks about modernizing the traditional research. Again, I gave you the example of, I think, turmeric also, that turmeric's properties have been vetted by modern science and they've found to be exactly true. Fine. So if we do that, it can be, let's say, good. We can use artificial intelligence, okay, to map all the trends. Okay, and let's say again we can have, let's say, you have yoga, meditation. So here also you can carry out MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, all these techniques to know about modern research techniques. Okay, then you have technological advancements also. Okay, so here also you can use mobile apps, online courses, other innovations to make the people aware as well and to reach out to a bigger audience. All right, and lastly, I told you this, the global hub for traditional medicine, etc., which is being, let's say, developed in Gujarat. It aims to standardize the traditional practices globally, and this wants to create this as a global center of all the repository and resources. Okay, so all the other countries can also take note and get, let's say, proper benefit from this particular case. Okay, so the traditional medicine system also, I think you can also note about challenges I've already told you. Okay, so this brings me to the end of this lecture. We'll just quickly go through what all we've seen now. Okay, I started basically by telling you or defining what is ethnobotany. Then we saw the case of turmeric. We saw what is biopiracy, bioprospecting. We saw convention on CBD. Okay, with that, remember Nagoya Protocol, access and benefit sharing. Okay, Costa Rica's agreement also happened. This Jivani, this is very important, Kani tribe. Then we saw why traditional knowledge must be documented. Then we saw the important role of ethnobotany in the Indian medicine system, the TKDL and its ambit being widened. Then we saw a lot of common names of the important plants and trees. Okay, their habitat, distribution, and botanical features. We saw some previous questions. We also saw this very small but important topic. What are the factors which are affecting action and toxicity of these drug plants and their chemical constituents? Okay, And lastly, we again saw one more question, and then we ended our discussion with the traditional system of medicine. And again, with I linked that with current affairs as well. Okay. Again, I'm telling you, with this, you can always expect at least 1 to 2 questions from this very lecture. So do this well. Revise the name of the species. That should be your takeaway. Whatever examples we have discussed, let's say read it 2 or 3 times. Or if you want to vocalize it, write it down, mention it on a chart, A4, whatever you want. But it should be on your tips. And finally, it should be on your answer copies as well if you want to get maximum marks. Okay. With that said, I'll now meet you with the next lecture. Thank you.